A very good evening to all the viewers. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Taiwan Jabela, your host. Let's look at some of the headlines in Friday's edition of Namibian Sun. Now, workers' participation in economic revival is necessary, according to the Trade Union Congress of Namibia. That is Mahongo Rakavihuha there in the photo. And he is making an absolute important point, whose details can be seen in Friday's edition of Namibian Sun. Also, on a rather unflattering note, time for rain is over. This is according to officials in the Ministry of Agriculture. There were anticipations that there will still be some rain in the month of April, but we are now told those prospects do not exist anymore, and we must just carry on with what we have. And finally, the Ministry of Agriculture has publicly called for anyone who is aware of its officials being corrupt in their dealings to report those matters to the ministry. This is in reference to a few allegations that have been made in that regard, and the ministry is saying that they do not condone such behaviors, and everybody who gets across such must contact them. Tonight on the show, we are joined by a man that I've been looking for a very long time, and I happen to be lucky today to have him in studio. His name is Rob Parker. Rob Parker is a well-known consumer activist, but he's associated with the Economic and Social Justice Trust here in Windhoek. You would recall Rob mostly from his activism around the issue of the Kavango oil exploration that he is vehemently opposed to. Thank you very much, my friend, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, definitely. Just to start with, Rob, you've been very, very active on this issue. What is it specifically that you are opposed to as far as ReconAfrica's activities in Kavango East is concerned?
Thank you very much for having me, first of all.
Sure.
I'm honored to be here. I first heard about this like many other Namibians. We just kind of heard rumors that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
If you remember, kind of very early on, this company isn't saying the same things they are now. What they were saying in the beginning was that they were planning on using fracking, right? Multiple and sustained representations to their investors that they would use fracking as the method to withdraw what they said was a massive shale gas find in the Kavango region. And I'm from Canada, as where this company is registered. We don't have much history with fracking, and maybe we don't know what the dangers are. But I was well aware of what the dangers of fracking were. Having spoken to people in communities that were affected by fracking in Canada, and people who had worked on such issues. And there's massive risk to your water, right? And those underground aquifers that are up there, we know, and living in Namibia, kind of how important water is, right? And then, it's also upstream from the Okavango Delta, which is, primarily located in Botswana, but still kind of crucially important to all, kind of our tourism and lots of, it's quite integral to us as well. So when I heard that a Canadian company was going to be, fracking, kind of upstream from the Okavango Delta, to be honest, I didn't believe it. I thought, who would let that happen? That's almost like a cartoonishly evil, who would put that, vital ecosystem, millions of people rely on that watershed at risk for fracking. And then, so that's kind of when I started asking around, hey, who knows something about this? And I started bothering the tourism people. I was like, hey, why aren't you guys saying anything? Yeah. And one of them put me in touch with, activists who are kind of already organizing. Yeah. And, my philosophy is, find the busy people in the group and work with them. And I did. And, I became, kind of very involved from the moment I joined.
Yeah. There's been consistent and persistent denials from both ReconAfrica and the Namibian environmental authorities that there were no such methods used. What is your take on those persistent denials and the arguments that the safest model of oil exploration are being deployed there? What has been your finding in that regard?
So, the company made these representations to investors, 11 straight months. They had the slides in their presentation that say modern frac stimulations, right? We know what these things mean, unconventional basins. And they put out so many of these, and they put out one called where they interviewed Nick Steinsberger, who's a member of their board, and they referred to him as the father of fracking, and they said, this Kavango Basin is Nick's next big challenge. How's he going to frack this thing? And I think what happened at that point is the Ministry of Mines and Energy said, hey, we didn't grant any license for this, and they put out a press release shortly after that. I hesitate to call it a news article. It's not a news article. It's the company's kind of paid stock pump media releases in oilprice.com, who they've got a kind of a dubious relationship with. So when they put that out, a couple of days later, the Ministry of Mines and Energy said, actually, no license for fracking has been granted. Yeah. And at that point, the company did an about face and said, actually, we misread this whole thing, despite the fact that, we're sophisticated geologists and we spent, all this money on all these reports and our own data say unconventional, i.e. fracking. They said, oh, no. Now it's conventional oil. Yeah. So the resource changed just overnight, with no new data, right? Yeah. So, yet the company continues to kind of leave the back door open for fracking, right? Yeah. You check their latest reports, they say, the Namibian people, by that they mean the Namibian government, will decide how the resource is extracted, right? And they're just kind of leaving their back doors open, and they want to leave that open as long as they can, so that at some point they just say, look, if you want this thing out of the ground, it's going to be fracking, and our license says we can frack, we're going to go ahead, right? This kind of thing has happened, several places all over the world where the company just sues the government and says, no, we've got the right to frack. Our contract says we've got the right to frack. So, Canadian companies behave in this kind of imperial kind of fashion sometimes in countries where they perceive they can abuse regulators or bully or buy their way into certain things. So, that's really what happened with the fracking. And now they like to say that we made it all up, right? It's something we just said. But in fact, there's a very kind of detailed history of these guys saying it, from Craig Steinke and Jay Park. They're on YouTube saying it. They're in their own stock pump articles saying it. So, they've said it over and over. They've told their investors over and over that it was fracking. So that's how that kind of came about, and that's kind of where the denials come from now.
Yeah. Give me a sense for myself, of course, but mostly for my viewers who do not understand what fracking is. What is fracking, and how dangerous is it?
So, you know, the way I understand it, is conventional oil is, for example, you have a box, okay? And the box is kind of full of tennis balls, and you've got some liquid, and you just stick a straw down in there, and you suck the liquid out. That's conventional oil, right? But fracking is much more complicated. Fracking is horizontal drilling. So you drill down, and then you drill sideways, right? And what happens is that you inject this kind of mixture of chemicals, water, glass beads, or sand. And what happens is when you blast that in, it goes into the seams. The sand or the glass beads kind of hold the seams open, and then all of this kind of gas rushes out, which you capture, right? Think of it more like going into a bunch of sheets of paper, right, rather than something clean straight down into the liquid, right? And these chemicals are these are toxic chemicals, right? And there's an incredible amount of water needed for each of these fracking wells, right? And if that really was fracking up there, they would need, and they told their investors, hundreds of wells, right, with millions of gallons of water each. And once that water goes down into the ground and is mixed with those chemicals, you can't clean it. Actually, you can, but it's not economical for the oil companies to do that, so they don't do that, right? That would eat into their profit. So they don't do that. That wastewater has to be disposed somewhere. Where all that wastewater going to be disposed? Where's all that water going to come from? So that's essentially fracking. If you've ever seen those YouTube videos where some lady in Colorado turns on her sink and flames shoot out. There's some incredibly toxic and harmful effects that are extremely well documented. There's all kinds of health risks, cancer and leukemia and associated things that go along with this technique.
Who has been listening amid all these efforts to sort of get the people alert? And last week you led a demonstration at an energy conference at Drombos. I saw videos. Who's listening at all to this?
Well, I just for clarity, there was a amazing young activist named Makonjo who called and organized that march.
Okay.
I just showed up. Okay. I just stick out. You know what I mean? But there are people listening. The public sentiment, I believe, has turned quite strongly against ReconAfrica. If you go, under the Facebook comments of any news story, people are kind of wise to what's going on. And public sentiment is important. Now, what we want to do is reach government with this message that what you're allowing this company to do isn't going to be worth it at the end of the day.
And speaking of government, Rob, last year around this time I had the Minister of Environment and Tourism, Pambashi Feta, on this platform, and I engaged him extensively on this subject. And to use his exact words, he said, these are paid thugs who are paid to make noise about Namibia's oil find, and the more they make noise, the more money they get in their pockets. Are you getting paid by anyone?
No, I've got some funding to come here and for operations. I didn't write myself a budget in there. Maybe I'm slow. Maybe I'm just not a very good thug. But I believe in this. I'm doing this because I'm extremely angry about this. I feel it's despicable for Canadians to come and do this, or at least a Canadian company. Most of these guys are American or work for Halliburton or whatever. We saw the lovely work they did in Iraq and Afghanistan. But the idea that these young activists who marched on the environment ministry the other day are somehow, in the service of foreign imperialists. I mean, I just find all that kind of rather silly, Are people not allowed to express their views?
Yeah.
Are people not allowed to be worried about climate change, which is a very, it's a very serious thing,
Yes.
right? Young people should be concerned.
Yeah.
The elders, maybe they think, hey, we're not going to be around for this, who cares?
Yeah.
But the young people should be tremendously concerned about, what these things mean for their future. And for me, I'm not really an environmentalist. It's the human rights violations that bother me the most, right? And if someone's committing human rights violations, chances are that's the person I'm going to call a thug. I'm not kicking anybody off their land. I'm not stealing from anybody. I'm coming here to make some noise to the best of my ability and put out factual information that we get from the communities, right? My job isn't to go to the Kavango and tell the community, hey, you must care about the environment. My job is to come and ask, hey, how did these people treat you? What happened on this day? How did you find out about the oil company? And that's what I do, right? I take that information and then I try and amplify those voices so that it reaches a wider audience, right? That's my role. I'm not here to bully anybody or tell anybody what to do, or to tell Namibians what to do with their resources, right? Leaving aside the whole green thing, I mean, I think it's, why would, if there was a massive oil field up there, why couldn't the Namibian government just buy a rig like ReconAfrica did, hire a crew to run it, right? I mean, this also, turns into, I'm a bit of a resource nationalist in a way. So, if it was really about Namibia's oil and gas, as the minister alleges, then go extract the oil and gas yourself and keep those profits to yourself, right? Now, I don't actually believe there's oil and gas in there, so it's a moot point. But what I'm saying is, defending this Canadian company that has given you a tiny share, who's boasted to their investors, in all of their publications, hey, the Namibian government's barely getting anything. This is a selling point to their investors because they all think they're going to get rich, which they're not. The company boasts about how small the royalties are, how little they have to pay, how little they have to do, how thoroughly they've captured the government, right? In terms of, we can do whatever we want here.
Definitely. And that is also, maybe give a bit of context, Rob. There's always this impression about, there's always this suspicion. And sorry for being blunt, but when a person hears this white man from Canada of all places coming to Namibia and saying no to oil exploration, that creates a bit of suspension. Give us a context. Of course, you just explained that you are very passionate about human rights, which I think all of us is a virtue that all of us ought to have. For example, one of the questions that will be asked is, Canada is actually one of the leading producers of oil in the world at the moment. And when a Canadian man comes to Africa and says, don't do that, that's suspicion.
That would be very suspicious if I owned an oil company in Canada and I was producing oil there, right? I'm telling the Canadians, when I'm in Canada, I say, why are you building that pipeline through First Nations land? Why are you violating the rights of those Indigenous people in Canada, right? I support the rights of the First Nations who are standing up against, for example, the TMX pipeline or the new gas project in British Columbia. Now, the Canadians are donkeys at home and abroad. I'm against the hypocrisy of my government, right? I don't view that as any kind of hypocrisy on my part. I see myself as having a stance that's quite even across the board. If you're abusing people's rights and you're a powerful corporation, I'm going to talk about you.
Definitely. Now, the minister, Shifeta, when he was here, he kept talking about how everything is supposedly being done by the book in Kawe village. And there seems to be suspicion from people like yourself as far as these sentiments are concerned. What is it that makes you very makes the minister's statements untrustworthy to people like yourself?
Because I've been there, right?
Yeah.
I've been to Kauai, I've been to Bambi, right?
Yeah,
And I've talked to people, right? And they don't say what the minister says,
Yeah.
right? And when the Parliamentary Standing Committee went up there, they made an effort to not stop in certain places where they would encounter people who would tell them straight what was happening, right? They skipped the community meeting in Bambi, which is the second drill site. So, you know, I wish that were true, you know. I don't know how often the Ministry of Environment and Tourism has actually been there themselves. I think what's happening is that most of our ministries are relying on the word of this oil company and not doing the due diligence themselves. And when they go up there, they're getting their hands held by the oil company and getting shown around by the oil company. Kind of like when you go to Israel and get the guided tour.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no human rights violations happening here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a. I think the expression is a dog and pony show. You know, you're not getting the real picture. They're not. If I can find it, right, and if I can go there and do the investigations, and my colleagues can go there and do the investigations, why can't the ministry, with all its resources, do those investigations and tell people what's happening and hold this company accountable, right? How badly do we need investment that we let investors run roughshod, right? We must have rules. If you don't have rules, you're never going to get the right investors in the first place, right? Investors want a level playing field and a fair playing field. That's mostly what they're looking for when they invest, and that's not really what's happening here.
The last question to you, Rob, then is again, I just want you to clarify on because there's this perception that there are people behind you, people who are funding your trips to Kauai Village and Bambi. And the questions, the suspicion is about what interest do they have in that, in sending you around, in empowering you with the platforms and stuff like that. Who are these people and what is their interest? Is it strictly people who just think that human rights and environmental protection is important, or do they have other motives, maybe profit and commercial interest in the matter?
Right. So, you know, I'm a socialist, you know, kind of for a long time. You know, there are lots of human rights and environmental organizations in the world that fund trips like mine. And certainly I couldn't afford to, you know, do everything myself. I spent quite a bit of my own money. You know, I bought my own plane ticket here, for example, paid for my own accommodation and all that kind of thing, and I don't draw a salary. But yeah, people do pay for me to go to the drill sites. But there are genuine human rights organizations that care about human rights. I'm talking to Human Rights Watch right now. I'm talking to Amnesty International. I will use those organizations where I see them as useful to support the people in the Kavango. But I would never work for a rival company or, you know, a private for-profit interest, or even somebody dubious, you know, like, you know, the Soros Foundation or somebody like that has that kind of bad kind of track record or whatever, or somebody who wanted to, you know, dictate, you know, what we say, what we do. It's just say, look, I'd like to be sent on a fact-finding mission. I need a small budget, and that's what it is.
Indeed. Rob, thank you for making time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I appreciate it. That's Rob Parker. He's again, as you have seen, is very, very opposed to the oil exploration activities in Kavango East region, and those were his views. Thank you for watching, and good night.